A spinning top on a table. For years, the internet has stared at that top. Does it fall or does it spin forever? Wrong question. Stop watching the top. Watch the man. He doesn't wait to see how it lands. He turns his back on it and walks toward his children. For the first time in the whole film, he doesn't need to know whether the world is real. Something in him let go. That is the ending, not the spin, the release. And Buddhism has been pointing at that for a very long time. Inception looks like a film about waking up. Stay with me, because waking up was never the hard part. Lucidity is not liberation. I rewatched Inception last week. With Nolan's The Odyssey putting his name back into every film conversation, it felt like the right time to return to the one where he hid a grief story inside a heist. And watching it again, older, I caught something I'd missed for years. Everyone remembers the machinery, the folding city, the van falling in slow motion, the kick, that final maddening shot. The film practically dares you to obsess over how the dream works. Far fewer people talk about what it's actually about. A man loses his wife. He can't let her go. So his own mind rebuilds her, and the version he rebuilds starts dismantling his life from the inside. That's the whole film. Everything else is architecture. What follows is a reading of Inception through Buddhism. I'm not telling you Nolan set out to make a Buddhist film. I doubt he did. I'm telling you it works as a parable. And Buddhism gives us a sharper question to ask of it than, was it all a dream? Because the real prison here was never the dream. Inception asks something quieter and harder. Not can you wake up, whether you can release the people you keep alive inside your own head. So let's go back under. The film wants you to fear the layers. A dream inside a dream inside a dream. Go too deep, lose track of which level is which, and you might never climb back out. That's the tension the whole heist runs on. The real danger is quieter and a lot closer to home. The dreamer forgets that he's the one dreaming. There's a line early in the film that everyone quotes, and almost nobody finishes the thought on.
Well, dreams, they feel real while we're in them, right?
They do. And so do grudges. So does guilt. So does the version of someone you keep replaying long after they're gone. Watch how a dream gets made. Cobb teaches a young architect, Ariadne, to construct one. And she folds a Paris street straight up over her own head until the city closes into a ceiling. She pulls bridges out of memory. She fills the streets with people who feel completely real, and every one of them comes out of her own mind, without her noticing she's the source. The mind makes a world, then forgets it had a hand in making it. Buddhism has a precise word for this. There's a discourse, the Madhupindika Sutta, about how the mind takes one flicker of sense contact and spins it outward into a whole sprawling world. The word is papansa, proliferation. The mind adding floor after floor to a building it's forgotten it ever started. And underneath it sits avijja. Not stupidity, a kind of not noticing. The mind never catches itself in the act. It takes what it made for solid ground. One caution, because this is where Buddhism gets flattened into a bumper sticker. The teaching is not that the world is fake. Empty does not mean fake. The word is shunyata, emptiness. And it means nothing stands as solidly, as separately, or as permanently as the mind insists. The world is real as experience. What it lacks is the foundation where certain holds it up. A dream you know is a dream has less power over you. Less power is not none, and Cobb is about to prove it. Because if the mind can conjure a city out of nothing, it can conjure a person. And Cobb made one he could never tear down. There's a saboteur loose in every job Cobb runs. She steps out of the dark at the worst possible moment, wrecks the plan, knifes his partner, derails everything, and she always seems to know where to cut. She's his wife. She's been dead for years, and he's the one who keeps letting her in. Her name is Mal. And the film doesn't protect Cobb from the truth of her. Mal is not a ghost, and she's not a villain. She's a projection. His own mind, wearing his dead wife's face. He knows it, that the woman tearing through these dreams is something he carries, not someone who's there. He even admits he can't recreate her completely, only a shadow of who she was. Buddhism has a word for that grip. Upadana, clinging, the hold that won't open after the thing is already gone. And there's something underneath it the film walks straight into. We've talked on this channel about no self, the teaching that a person is really 5 heaps stacked together. Form, rupa, feeling, vedana, perception, sanya, mental formations, sankhara, consciousness, vijnana. Pull them apart and you find no fixed little soul at the bottom. Now look at what Cobb actually meets in those dreams, not Mal. His experience of Mal, memory, feeling, perception, the old reflexes of love and guilt, assembling into a face and calling it her. The real Mal is gone. What stalks him is a model of her, running on his own grief. That's why she works as a character. She isn't only Cobb's memory of his wife. She's what memory becomes when guilt keeps feeding it. Make something out of love and regret, feed it every night, and sooner or later it stands up and walks on its own. And here's the detail the whole thing turns on. Cobb knows she isn't real, and it changes nothing. He can explain her, he understands exactly what she is, and he's still on the floor. Hold that. We come back to it, and it's the key to everything. The film trusts you to feel the next part without being told. You have a Mal too. Somewhere in your mind, right now, there's a person who's gone. Maybe they died. Maybe they only walked out. Maybe you haven't spoken in 10 years. And you still talk to them. You still win the argument you never got to finish. You still brace for what they'd think of the life you're living. You made them. Out of memory, guilt, and a love that never found anywhere to land. There's a voicemail you can't make yourself delete. That is Mal. The argument you've replayed for years, sharpening the line you wish you'd said. That is Mal. A parent whose voice still grades everything you do and never quite approves. That is Mal. The ex who lives in your head, colder than they ever were, or kinder, rewritten into whoever the story needs. That is Mal. None of them are standing in the room with you. Each one is a projection, running on your mind, drawing its power from a feeling you won't set down. Buddhism never told you to stop loving them. That's the misread, and it's a cruel one. The teaching is gentler and stranger. It says we suffer twice. There's a discourse, the Salatha Sutta, where the Buddha describes a man struck by an arrow. The pain of the wound is the first arrow, unavoidable. Then, thrashing in distress, the man reaches out and drives a second arrow into the same spot himself. Grief piled onto grief, the refusal to let the gone be gone. The first arrow is what happened to you. The second one, you pick up yourself. We made a whole video once about the hungry ghosts, beings with throats too narrow to swallow and bellies that never fill, forever reaching for a meal they can't take in. That picture isn't only about the afterlife, it's also about this. Reaching every day for someone who isn't there to reach back. The hunger never ends, because what it wants can't be received. So the way out isn't forgetting. Buddhism draws a thin line here, and everything depends on it. The line between honoring and clinging. Honor a memory and the person stays where they belong, in the past, loved, at rest. Cling, and you drag them into the present and hand them the keys. Let them wreck your jobs. Let them climb out onto the ledge. Mal is honoring curdled into clinging. So the film leaves you with an uncomfortable question. Who is your Mal? Cobb at least gets to see his, a face, a name, a fight he can have out loud. Most of us carry ours in silence, call it love, and never feel the weight we're under. And the film gives that place a name, Limbo. Halfway. So far, the mind makes a world and forgets it had a hand in it. Grief gives the world a face. Now we need the place where Cobb gets trapped and the force that keeps him there. But first, the thing the film is actually named after. Inception isn't really about dreams. It's about an idea planted so deep, it feels like your own. Cobb lays it out himself.
What is the most resilient parasite? A bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea.
One idea can build a city. One idea can wipe it out. Watch how many ideas get planted in this film. Cobb plants one in Fisher, be your own man, and it frees a son from his dead father. Cobb planted one in Mal once, your world is not real, and it destroyed her. And by the end, there's a third Inception, the one Cobb needs performed on himself. An idea he spent the whole film refusing to let take root. I can let her go. That's the seed the rest of the film is trying to plant. Whether it takes is the only question left. The prison first. There's a level beneath the dream. Not another designed world, something deeper and older. Fall too far, get lost down there, and time comes loose. An hour at the surface stretches into years below. You can live what feels like a lifetime in a single night. And Cobb has been there. He and Mal went down together once, and in that deep, formless place, they made a world, a city, just the two of them. Streets out of their memories, houses from their past, raised by two people who loved each other and had what felt like forever to fill. They grew old there, together. Then they surfaced, and only one of them ever truly came back. Tibetan Buddhism keeps a map for something this rhymes with. I want to be careful, because the two aren't the same, and I won't pretend they are. In the tradition, between one life and the next, there's an in-between, the bardo. We built a whole video on the text that charts it, and its central danger is this: the mind, set loose, meets its own projections, and mistakes them for solid reality. Visions rise, lovely or terrifying, and they feel completely real, because they're made of you. Again and again, the teaching turns on recognition. Can you see the vision as mind, before it swallows you whole? Inception's Limbo is not the bardo, but it rhymes with the same fear. What if the mind can conjure a world so convincing the recognition comes too late? You don't have to die to fall into a place like that. People move into the world grief furnishes and quietly stop leaving. A room kept exactly as it was. A whole life arranged around an absence, until the world down there, the one where they're still here, feels safer than the daylight without them. Mal couldn't leave. That's the tragedy underneath the entire film. When it was time to surface, she no longer believed the world above was real. The long years below had convinced her the surface was the dream, and the dream was home. So Cobb tried to save her. He went into her mind and planted a small, deep seed of doubt. Your world is not real, so she'd be willing to come home. It worked. She came back, and the seed kept growing. Up in the waking world, the real one, the doubt kept whispering, "This one isn't real either. Wake up." Until one night she stepped onto a ledge, certain that falling would wake her into her true life. Cobb reaches for her, still trying to call back the doubt he started, and she's gone. The seed he planted to free her is the seed that killed her. That's the guilt running under everything. He didn't only lose his wife. Some part of him believes he wrote the thought that killed her. So he's haunted, and here's the cruelty of it. The part that should free him and doesn't. He knows exactly what's real. He's the most lucid man in the room. A prison still needs something to keep you inside it, and the Buddha named that force directly. On the night he woke up, something came for the Buddha first. He sat under the tree, right at the edge of the thing he'd given everything to reach. And before the breakthrough, at the very threshold, he was besieged. The tradition calls the attacker Mara, death, fear, craving, and temptation given a voice. Everything in the mind that rises to stop awakening at the last moment. One discourse, the Padana Sutta, lays out the armies of Mara marching on a single man sitting still beneath a tree, and the man refusing to move. Cobb has one of those too. His takes the shape of his wife. A quick honesty. Mal and Mara only sound alike. The names aren't connected. One's Latin, one's Sanskrit. But the echo works anyway, because Mara is the voice that says the same three things every time. Stay asleep, stay attached, don't you dare let go. And in Cobb's mind, that voice looks exactly like the woman he lost. Now the harder Buddhist point, the one that turns this film into something deeper. Mara didn't lose at the tree and vanish. In one discourse, he shadows the Buddha for 7 years after the awakening, the fully awakened Buddha, the one who already won, hunting for any opening, any crack. And in another, when Mara appears, the Buddha doesn't fight him. He names him, "I know you, wicked one," and that's enough. Mara, seen clearly, loses his hold. He still appears. He simply finds no purchase. Now set the two men side by side. The Buddha, awake, clear, free, and Mara still appears. Cobb, lucid, certain, fully aware of what Mal is, and she owns him completely. That is the nightmare, not being fooled, being trapped even after the fooling stops. This is the point the whole film is built around. Awareness is not the finish line. Knowing your dream is a dream doesn't free you. Knowing your grief is grief doesn't lift it. Cobb has total insight into his own prison, and it changes nothing, because insight was never the thing that frees you. You can understand your prison and still decorate the walls. So what's left if knowing isn't enough? One move, not proof. He has all the proof there is. Release. In the film, a kick is what wakes you. A jolt, a fall, the floor dropping away, the van tipping off the bridge in slow motion. The body lurches and you surface. Cobb needs a kick too. His isn't a fall, it's a sentence. One he has to say to a ghost, and mean. At the bottom of the film, he goes back down into limbo and finds her. The version of his wife he's carried and fed and fought for years. And he finally says it.
Just a shade. You're just a shade of my real wife.
That is the kick. Read what's happening there. He isn't denying he loved her. He's looking straight at the projection and naming exactly what it is. A shadow of the real woman. The best his grieving mind could manage. And not somewhere he can keep living. That's not hatred. That's grief finally setting down the second arrow. And look what he turns toward in the same breath. 2 real children, alive, in a world that's messier and dimmer and true. He stops trying to repair the past. He lets it be past. This is the difference the whole video has been climbing toward. The gap between waking up and leaving. Cobb has known the truth for years. What he does now is stop using the truth as a place to hide. And let me say it plainly, because this is where people hear Buddhism and flinch. Letting go is not forgetting. Non-attachment is not the end of love. The Buddha who released Mara didn't stop caring about the world. He spent 45 more years walking it, teaching anyone who'd listen. Cobb doesn't erase Mal. He opens his hand. And only with his hand open can he hold what's still alive in front of him. That's the part nobody warns you about letting the dead go. Releasing them is how you finally get to keep them. As a memory, set gently in the past, where reaching for it stops drawing blood. And then comes the image everyone remembers. The top, still spinning. He sets it spinning out of habit, his totem, his one test for what's real. Then he walks away before it lands. For the entire film, that top has been his anchor to reality, the single object that tells him which world he's in. And at the end, he doesn't wait for the answer. His children are in the garden. He goes to them. The top was never the question. The question was whether Cobb could turn away. That's what years of debate keep missing. Everyone is staring at the top, asking, is it real? And Cobb has already answered the bigger one by walking away. A free mind doesn't need to know how the spin lands. It doesn't need the world to settle before it can rest. Lucidity is not liberation. Letting go is. So I'll leave you where the film leaves Cobb. Maybe that's the real Inception. The one idea that once it takes root, you can't unthink. That love doesn't ask you to keep the ghost alive. You're allowed to walk away from the top. We take ancient Buddhist ideas and test them against the stories you already love, and there's a new one every week. If you want the other side of this, the one about whether the world itself is real, that's our Matrix video, and it pairs with this one. The red pill was never enlightenment. And tell me in the comments, what did Cobb really escape at the end? The dream, the guilt, or the need to know? I read these, and the best answers often shape where we go next. Subscribe, sit with it, and I'll see you in the next one.